Hello everybody and welcome to another review discussion. Today we have a very special game. It's The Last of Us Part 1. Now I did get a code from this off Sony because I did some content for Game Explain. So again, this is just going to be a casual review discussion. Going to be no spoilers. If there is any spoilers I will timestamp them, but there shouldn't be many spoilers. I won't really talk about the story in depth. But I did get a review code, which I do have to say. I made a collectibles guide for Game Explain, so if you're interested in seeing how to get all the collectibles, then it's up there. But I think this one is interesting because The Last of Us 1, so before The Last of Us 2 came out, if you would ask me, say, what my top 3 games were, Majora's Mask is always number 1. Nothing is it. I don't think anything is ever going to overtake that because it's the first game I can remember ever playing. And then on top of that, it is an amazing game as well. So it's a mixture of nostalgia and just how good the game is. So I don't think anything's going to ever dethrone that. But then if you would ask me now, my top 3 and top, like, from 2 to 5, depending on the day, you know, there'd be different games. But it was always, The Last of Us was number 2 or 3. And then, you know, Borderlands 2 and probably The Binding of Isaac and Rocket League, and there's a load of other games there. But anyway, before The Last of Us 2 came out, The Last of Us 1 was in my top 5. And then The Last of Us 2 came out, and then The Last of Us 2 was in my top 5. It took over The Last of Us 1 because I think the gameplay is just so much better. So then, Part 1, the remake, came out. Or was coming out, and I was thinking, this looks interesting. Obviously, everyone knows the controversy is that it's only a graphics update and there's no new additions, and why are we paying $70 or €80 for this now? Obviously, I didn't spend the money, but I was buying it regardless day one. So I think when you're reviewing this game, and I actually had a good conversation with my friend David over this. I think when reviewing this game, I had to ask myself a question, and I asked David this question. So, The Last of Us 1 is a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. It was a 10 out of 10 on PS3, it was a 10 out of 10 on PlayStation 4, and if we're looking at this as The Last of Us just the single player, it's still a 10 out of 10, the PS5 remake. And then you have to take into consideration the price point, which, depending on who, I'm still kind of undecided on where I want to go with the price point for my reviews. Because I know people like SkillUp, he doesn't really take into consideration the price, but people like ACG do. So it is a valid point when reviewing a game for consumers. But then you get into the question of reviewing a game as art and reviewing game as a product. And this is what this is a point that David brought up. Was that if I review The Last of Us Part 1 as art, it was a 10 out of 10, and it is still a 10 out of 10. If anything, it's an 11 out of 10 now because the graphics and 60 FPS. But if you review it as a product, like, the story is still amazing, the graphics are great, the encounter design is masterful. Like, the gameplay itself is so simplistic, but every encounter is so memorable because I've beaten this game I think 3 or 4 times in my life, but every single encounter I can remember. And there are so many iconic encounters from this game that just stick out in my mind, and they will forever be there. So then you have to talk about the stuff that isn't there. So this is a game, look, if you've never played The Last of Us and you want to play The Last of Us, this is the best way to play The Last of Us. I wouldn't watch any reviews, I would just go and buy the game, because if you haven't experienced it, this is the best way to experience it. So that doesn't apply to me, or I'd imagine most other people that watch this video, because most of us have already played this game. So then when you start to look at it as a product, you're going to have things like, well, the multiplayer's gone. I fucking loved factions. I put hours into factions on the PlayStation 3. So there's no multiplayer. Now, the DLC is included, but the DLC was included in the PS4 remaster, so, you know, that's neither here nor there. And then you have to take into account the upgrades. So are the upgrades worth it? Because at the end of the day, it is just mostly a graphics upgrade. There's a few quality of life improvements, like when you pick up collectibles, Joel actually picks it up and you can look at it. And now it's been a while since I've played the original or the PS4 version, so other than that, I don't really know what other quality of life improvements. When you go back and you look at it, big difference. And then I think another thing, I played like maybe 10 minutes of The Last of Us, the PS4 remaster before this. Joel's movement speed is a lot faster. So I think if you've already played this game and you are sitting there asking yourself, is this game worth $70 or €80? More than likely the answer to your question is going to be, no, it's not. I'll wait until it goes on a sale. Because in my mind, I saw the upgrades and I was like, I want to re-experience this game. I fucking love this game. I have no problem spending €80 on this game again. And as I said, I would have done it regardless. If I didn't get the review code, I still would have went out and got it. So I think the questions, this is a bit rambly, but the questions I'm trying to answer in this review is, like, what is The Last of Us as art, and what is The Last of Us Part 1 as a product? Because, again, I think they're two completely different things. So I think we'll start with the more positive side, which is The Last of Us Part 1 as art. Because as art, it is near perfect. So for anyone that doesn't know, The Last of Us is a game. You play as Joel. And it starts out and you are in the midst of an apocalypse kicking off, and there's these things called the clickers, who are it's like a fungal infection that infects people and makes them go crazy and starts eating people. So the opening, I won't spoil it, but the opening is one of the strongest openings to a game I have ever played. And if you've played it, you know, because every single time I play this game, it hits me. And one thing is that I think the last time I played this game was like 2016. I played it with my girlfriend. And back then, I wasn't really a crier. I didn't really cry at many things, like movies or music or anything like that, games. But then like 2017, 2018 came around, and the first thing I ever cried at was Blackfish, that documentary about SeaWorld, because a lot of the lies that the park rangers told to the people were told to me when I was a kid, when I was in SeaWorld, because I was fascinated with the orcas. So that hit me. And then when you see the orcas being taken away from their moms and all that, you know, that got me. So that was the first time I cried at anything. And then ever since then, I fucking cry at everything. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that I have a girlfriend now and kind of looking forward to a future and all that, and I've dogs too. So when you have dogs, and you know, dogs are cute, and then every now and again the thought pops into your head of when they're gonna die, and you know, it gets sad. So I've never played The Last of Us since I haven't played The Last of Us since I've been a crier. And then the opening came, and now I didn't cry, but I got teary-eyed. And it's just that, like, the emotionality, the emotionalness, I don't know what the word is, but the emotion of the game is what drives home what makes this as a product, like an art product, so good. And I think there's two things that they do well. They do pretty much everything perfectly in this game, but there's a few things that drive that point home. So firstly, the acting, the voice acting, and just the attention to detail with everything. It makes it feel realistic, even though it's not. Like, this is one of the most real stories ever. And it's about loss and grief and survival, and it really, really, really drives, like, it just digs into you. So yeah, it's like Naughty Dog's attention to detail is probably Rockstar are probably the only company that rival them. Rockstar maybe are slightly better at it, but I think they're kind of different things. But yeah, their attention to detail is absolutely insane. There's Arlo in the background, but so that makes it really realistic. And then the acting, I mean, before like Uncharted and The Last of Us, I knew absolutely nothing about voice actors. And I understand Troy Baker now is like, Troy Baker is Troy Baker, and Troy Baker is in every single fucking game in the world. But Troy Baker playing Joel doesn't sound like Troy Baker. He sounds like Joel. And his performance is absolutely unbelievable. And then Ashley Johnson as well as Ellie is crazy. And she voices Gretchen from fucking Recess, which is crazy. But yeah, the voice acting is unbelievable. And then I think with the remake, with the graphics, so I never really noticed this. If you watch gameplay of The Last of Us, the original Last of Us or the PS4 remaster, PS4 remaster like put the saturation up crazy. So it almost looks kind of like, what was that game? Enslaved Odyssey to the West, is that the name of it? The Andy Serkis game on the PlayStation 3. But like now with the more realistic graphics, it just drives everything home. And then another thing, and then like the final thing that kind of makes it such a compelling and realistic story and place to live in, is that the environmental storytelling. Again, I'm gonna keep using this phrase throughout this whole video, but the environmental storytelling is, again, some of the best ever. Like, there's no question about it. The amount of times where there's one part in the sewers you're walking through when you go into this kid's playroom, and there's like, there's paintings on the wall, there's colourful blocks, there's toys everywhere, and then you read a note, and the note is like, I'm the last adult. I'm trapped in this room with all the kids. There's clickers at the door. I don't know how long we'll survive. Like, things like that. Or like, there was one specifically that was, no, I won't. I'm not going to spoil it. But anyway, there's just take my word that there is at least 10, no more. There's at least 20 or 30 artifacts, which are the little notes that you can find, that when you read them, you will just sit there like think, Jesus. Like, there's one that involves a dog, and yeah, it's not nice. And there's just so many more. You're just gonna have to take my word for it, because again, it's something you kind of want to experience. And then I think I'm not gonna spoil the actual conclusion, but the conclusion to the story, it makes you feel things. It makes you what the conclusion to the story does is it puts you, it makes you sit there and think. Like, you sit there in Joel's boots and you think, if I was in that situation, what would I do? And just the fact that it makes you ask yourself that question means it's like more compelling than 99.9% of game stories out there. 99.9% of stories out there, I would argue. So, like, I think as a piece of art, The Last of Us is one of the best examples of the heights that games can reach. And then when you tie into it the gameplay design, which is quite simplistic. There isn't much to it. There's enough so that you don't get bored, but then the encounters themselves are built really well. And it's just, it truly is. I absolutely love this game. Like, it is one of the best games ever made. So on an art level, if I'm going to just put a definitive answer on that question in my mind right now, on an art level, The Last of Us was a 10 out of 10 on the PlayStation 3, it was a 10 out of 10 on the PlayStation 4, and it's a 10 out of 10 on the PlayStation 5. If anything, it's 11 out of 10 because the game looks and runs absolutely amazingly, and the graphics are fucking insane. And I think, just while speaking about the graphics, I think if you watch The Last of Us Part 1 gameplay without either playing the original recently or watching gameplay of the original recently, you will probably think, oh, that doesn't look that much different, because I thought the same. And everybody thought the same with the trailers. But then they did the comparison trailers, and then you watch comparison videos online and you're like, oh my god, yeah, they did a lot here. This isn't a run-of-the-mill upgrade. And then I think another thing that we need to take into consideration when talking about these upgrades is that you have a lot of people in the industry who are championing people keeping their jobs. You know, developers deserve to be paid, all this stuff, which is fair enough. But a lot of these people, well, I'm not going to say a lot, but some of these people who are championing, you know, unionization and developers getting the right pay and working the right hours are complaining that this game comes out at $70-$80 or $70, but then Naughty Dog come out, and I know this is just a corporation speaking, a corporation's like speak, but they came out and said the reason why we did this project is because we had a load of staff that were either going to be sacked or we gave them this project. So unfortunately you can't have your cake and eat it in that situation. But I think ultimately this is still a very, very sound product, and if you spend $70 or €80 on this, you won't be disappointed, because it is, again, one of the best games ever made. On the art side. But now it's time to talk about The Last of Us as a product, if we're going to review it as a product. So a few of the upgrades, so I'll start here. So a few of the upgrades are, I know Joel's movement speed is improved, which is much appreciated, especially since I was collecting all the collectibles. So walking around at that slow pace collecting all the collectibles would have been an even bigger pain in the hole if he was a lot slower. The UI is cleaned up. The UI does look a lot nicer. Just little things like when you pick up collectibles, you can read them there and then. Obviously the graphics, there's a lot with the graphics. It's pretty much everything. I'm like, all the animations are redone. Well, I'm not going to say all the animations. I don't know that for certain, but a lot of the animations are redone. The facial capture is definitely redone, and all the characters have been aged up by their look. But people are complaining that Ellie, like, I think in the original Ellie looks like she's about 10 or 11, but I think Ellie's like 13 or 14. So I think in this game she does look a lot more close to her age. And like in the original, Joel, I think is like 30 to mid 30s. No, he'd actually be older because it's 20 years after. And like at most, say, I know he had his daughter young, so let's say he had his daughter at 20. He was like 40 in the Last of Us. He did not look 40. Now he does look 40 or around 40. So a lot of the characters are aged up, so they do look different. But I do think that they did a great job with it. And then I'm trying to think of what other upgrades there were. Apologies, Arlo wants to go out, so I'm gonna let Arlo out. Hopefully he doesn't bark. But anyway, so there has been, like, it's not like a massive, like, the graphics are a massive upgrade, but everything else is just slight little improvements that make the game just a bit smoother to play. Obviously, you can play at a 4K 60, 4K 30, and then I think there's a 120 FPS mode. I could be wrong. But anyway, that is The Last of Us. So now when we get into it as a product, this is when it kind of gets a bit more complicated. So, as I said, The Last of Us is a 10 out of 10. And I think it's a 10 out of 10 because of the single player. And the multiplayer of the original only bolstered that because the multiplayer was unbelievable. If you don't know, the multiplayer was, I think it was 4v4, 5v5. And you had one life. And it was exactly like the gameplay. It was like 5v5. And you were slinking around. You were stealth. You had barely any ammo. You were like scavenging for little resources across the map so you could build Molotovs or, you know, make an arrow or... Actually, I'm not sure if you can make arrows in that game, but, like, you know, make Molotovs, make medkits. And on top of that, there was like this little meta game where you had a camp, and as you kill people, you got like food and resources. And then if you did really bad in a lot of matches, a lot of your people would die, and if you did really good, a lot of, like, you'd bring in new survivors and they'd last longer and stuff. So it was a pretty unique game, like, multiplayer at the time, because I mean, back then multiplayers were, you know, they were Call of Duty. Like, that's, like, you have so many games like that, like Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Battlefield, fucking even something that is more unique, like Gotham City Imposters. It still felt like Call of Duty, but with kind of like a few little abilities. So it was very interesting. Well, it was kind of a bit like Gears of War multiplayer, but I never really played much of that, to be honest. Well, I played a very small bit of it. So, I need to take a sip of my coffee. So, now you have to kind of look at the game as 10 out of 10 for the single player, which it still is. But then you have to think, like, does the multiplayer detract from it? And as someone who loved the multiplayer, I don't think it does, because the game is still fantastic. Obviously, like, if it's maybe like waning, like, again, I know I'm using scores a lot in this, but this is more just to get a point across. I don't really like scores, but like, say if The Last of Us single player is a low 10 out of 10, like, it's kind of hovering between maybe a 9.5 and a 10. I think if it's a multiplayer, if the multiplayer is in this, then it's a strong 10, where there's like very little that could drop it from that 10. Whereas imagine now there was a few bugs and stuff in the game, then maybe you drop it down to a 9.5 because it's only the single player and the bugs are a bit annoying. So I don't think it fully detracts from it, but obviously I would have preferred if it was in it. And then, like, when you get onto it there, like, after the multiplayer, you then have to take into consideration the price. So $70 or €80 is a lot of money. And at most, if you do everything in The Last of Us, if you platinum it, again, the trophy list on this is way better than the original trophy list as well, but if you platinum this game, maybe 15 hours. Maybe. I think I put 13 hours to get all the collectibles. And then other than that, I think it's mostly just clean up stuff that I have to do. So, you know, there's not much. Maybe 15, 16 hours maximum. Which, for me personally, my mind is never time played to money spent. I never go for that. But I know it is important to some people, which, I mean, is fair enough. If you're only buying one game a month and you want that game to last you a month, what is going to be better for you, buying The Last of Us or buying Assassin's Creed Odyssey? Like, it's going to be Assassin's Creed. So I'm back and I watched the video back so I know what we were talking about. We were talking about price. Apologies for that. So, again, you're probably only going to get, say, 16 hours playtime at most out of this game, which is a lot of money. Which isn't too much time for how much money you're going to spend. But it is, like, some of the highest quality hours you're going to spend. So I think if you are somebody who was worried, I think this just applies to every game. I don't really know why I'm saying this. If you are worried about time spent or time played to money spent, just wait. At Christmas, this game's going to be like €50 or something. There, you save 20, 30 euro, depending on what the price drops to. And then, like, I think if this game was 50 or 60 euro, I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, go out and buy this game, regardless of if you're thinking about, I've already played this. But, yeah, so I think it is a very difficult question to answer, especially as someone, you have to realize going into this that I fucking love this game. I will take any excuse to play this game, like any excuse whatsoever. So just keep that in mind when you hear what I'm saying, because I think I haven't actually watched any other reviews for this game because I wanted to make this review blind, like myself. But I saw SkillUp's thumbnail and it said, like, I highly recommend The Last of Us. So I'd imagine the way SkillUp reviews his games, he looked at it from the standpoint of, is this game good? Not for the price, he just, is this game good? And in his mind, I can't find a compelling argument to say that The Last of Us is a bad game. I can understand some people maybe are like, look, I don't like third-person action games, but then you're like locking yourself out of like 90% of the industry. But let's say I don't like third-person action games, and I also don't like post-apocalyptic stories. Fair enough. You don't like that, then you're not going to like this. But I don't think anybody could sit there and say that The Last of Us is a bad game, because it isn't. And I'd imagine, I'm pretty sure ACG's review, who he takes into consideration price, he probably looked at it as a, yes, this game is great. Yes, the technical aspects are very good. But it is a lot of money for a rather, like, a game that has already been released. So again, if you're sitting here thinking, oh, do I want to spend €80 on this? Don't. Like, if that's a question in your mind, don't spend it. Just wait. Give it 3 months, Christmas. You get it for €50. There you go, fine. €50, perfect. But I think if you have never played this game before, then The Last of Us Part 1 is a must play. And this is the best way to play it, hands down. And then I think there's one last sort of person. Somebody who has played the game before, they love it, and are wondering, should I play it again? And I think what you have to realize is you're going to be watching the same cutscenes, you're going to be doing the exact same encounters, you're going to be doing the exact same puzzles. So, like, I'd imagine there are people out there that love this game, that this moment in time just isn't, they're just not in the mood for playing it. So I just skip it and just wait. So, other than that, like, this is a shorter one because I don't really have much to say interesting about the game itself, because everybody's reviewed The Last of Us, everyone knows it's great, but it's more like review, like it's more the, you know, is it worth €80 kind of. That would be more how I'm structuring this review. So, and then another type of person is if you want the accessibility options, because there is a fucking insane amount of accessibility options in this game, which is great. Now, obviously, Naughty Dog are a massive company, so they can afford to do stuff like this, and, you know, it's only good. But, like, one thing that I think might entice some people. So there is a customizable difficulty in this. So in the previous games, there was, like, you know, easy, normal, hard, grounded, survivor, or whatever. And obviously they went from easier to harder. But in this, you can change every aspect of the game to a different difficulty. So I was collecting all the collectibles, which meant I didn't want to have to worry about slinking around and conserving ammo. But I still wanted the enemies to be hard, because every single time I've played this game, I've beaten this game on the hardest difficulty on PS3, and it's a tough game because the resource management is so vital. And, like, the amount of times you just have to redo encounters because maybe you wasted 2 bullets that you shouldn't have, and you have to, like, perfect them, which is great. But I've played the game like that, like, 3 or 4 times. So this time I was like, look, I want the enemies to be hard enough so that I still have to think, but I don't have to worry about my ammo. So what I did was, I cranked the resources down to the lowest difficulty so that there was loads around, but then I made the stealth and the enemies, I think, either normal or hard, so that the awareness, like, I still had to be good at stealth, and the enemies were still smart and also took more damage rather than, you know, me punching them 3 times and they're dead. And it's such a good system. Like, I would love to see other games implement this. But I understand it, like, it's definitely not easy to implement because there's a lot of variables, and the more variables you add in, it's just gonna excuse me, it's just gonna make it infinitely more complicated. So I do feel, now that I think about this, I do think this is definitely, I know I've only done like 3 of these videos, this is definitely the most rambly one, because I'm not reviewing the game how I'd normally review it. I'm more asking 2 types of questions and trying to answer them. So I hope this was good. I mean, it was probably okay, but that's a very, very confident statement there, isn't it? But yeah, I'd actually like these sort of videos. I'd love to get a bit of conversation going, because that's the whole point of it being a discussion. So I'd love to know what you actually think about this. Like, are you going to buy this game for €80? It's out today, so have you bought it? Are you going to buy it? And then what are your thoughts on the price? Because, again, I would buy it regardless. But I really appreciate your time. Don't forget to like the video and follow me on Twitter, and we have a Discord down below if you want to join and chat about whatever you want to chat about. And I will be streaming either Saturday or Sunday, which is either the day after this goes up or the day after this goes up. So I don't know what I'm going to stream, but it might be Splatoon 2 because I'm excited for Splatoon 3. So yeah, I just thank you everybody for listening to my ramblings. The last video actually did really well, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.